Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung, and today what we're going to be discussing is something that, quite frankly, I did not expect to be discussing, and this is something that I briefly touched on during the off-season, but now I'm actually going to have to revisit this because it looks like this may actually be coming to light after all. And if this is the case, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I'm not upset about it, don't get me wrong, but I may have to eat some crow. It's the best kind of crow to taste, but I'll go ahead and get into that in just a moment. But before that, really quick, let's just go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, yes, I said Twitter, and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to You Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less in their projected stat. They give you free squares. Today happens to be Taco Tuesday, so keep an eye out for discounted props. They give you Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you are any kind of fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, spell that out, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. All right, folks, so let's go ahead and talk about what I was referring to. So, as the title of the video suggests, is there hope for Austin Jackson after all? Now, anybody who's been listening to this show for some time knows that I've been talking about those 14 snaps against the New England Patriots in Week 1 of the 2022 season, hyping them up like there's some kind of massive amount of proof that Austin Jackson, there's actually a really good player locked deep inside of him. And while I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of just handing the right tackle job to him, I absolutely wanted him to compete for it. It seems that the Miami Dolphins are very much convinced that Austin Jackson is apparently the long-term answer at right tackle. Even now, we're hearing word that Dalton Risner is currently visiting a team, so the best veteran guard out on the market looks like he's going to be visiting somebody who is not the Dolphins. They seem to be very intent on making sure that Isaiah Wynn is going to be the favorite to get that left guard spot, which, by the way, he did get activated off of the PUP list. And so did Teron Armstead, even though he didn't actually practice with everybody, he was activated, and it looks like he'll be joining the offensive line soon enough. But with that being said, the main focus that we're going to be looking at right here is none other than Austin Jackson. Why Austin Jackson specifically? Why are we keeping an eye on him and not anybody else? Why do we not care about maybe Liam Eichenberg? Or just how good is Isaiah Wynn? Or rather, how bad is Isaiah Wynn? Well, the fact of the matter is, it doesn't really matter at this point. Isaiah Wynn is going to be the left guard, whether we like it or not. It seems like it's his job to lose, and every report from Liam Eichenberg is just that he just doesn't seem to be getting it. At this point, if I am the Miami Dolphins, I'm going to look at Liam Eichenberg and say, listen, I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what your problem is, but it seems to me that you actually ended up performing better at center than anywhere else. And if that is the case, then I would just look at Liam Eichenberg and say, let's go ahead and just make you a center, because it seems to me that's the only place that you seem to be any good at. Once again, Alfredo Arteaga and Jacob Michelle were at training camp, and they were able to go ahead and give a breakdown of everything that they saw during this most recent practice, and this practice was the first one in some semblance of pads, so we were actually able to see some real matchups going on here. And what we saw, and this is again where it's just the most shocking thing in the world, not once, but twice, Austin Jackson apparently had a really, really good rep against Jalen Phillips, of all players. And all this time that we've been spending hyping up Jalen Phillips, acting like he's going to be the next Cameron Wake or the next Jason Taylor, he's going to be the next big thing as far as Miami Dolphins pass rushers go. We've been talking so much about him, talking about how he's going to be some incredible Hall of Famer in the making. And yet Austin Jackson, of all players, not once, but twice, had really good reps against him. Now, why do I point out these two good reps? Am I doing the same thing again with the New England Patriots one? No. I'll be fair about this sort of thing. Alfredo Arteaga, when he goes on his OnlyFins Discord server, which again, by the way, is only $3 a month, and you get in on all the stuff that you're technically not supposed to be able to get. So you're going to be able to get it firsthand. It's not public. It's completely private. And so that is a very heavily vetted, but you can get in there. It's just $3 a month. But with that being said, he's fair about this whole thing. When somebody has a bad rep, he says somebody has a bad rep. For instance, if Tua Tagovailoa makes a mistake, which by the way, thankfully there haven't been that many of, when he does make a mistake, Alfredo will point it out. So it's not like he's just picking and choosing who he wants to compliment and when. He'll talk about anybody. He'll say if they did a good job. He'll say if they did a bad job. Here, I'll go ahead and I will give just one example. Tua missed Eric Ezukanma on an out pattern. There was some trash at Tua's feet, I guess. I don't know. But either way, he still missed him. So that's something that he can say, oh, Tua didn't do a good job on that one. So we're being fair. It is not like we're just picking and choosing, oh, we'll only mention Tua's highlights and we'll just ignore all the mistakes. Everybody gets compliments and everybody gets criticism. Nothing and no one is off limits when it comes to what their level of performance is. So again, we are actually going ahead and we are talking about Austin Jackson. And Austin Jackson, he's had a few practices where he's been able to go one-on-one with Jalen Phillips, and he definitely stonewalled Cameron Good the other day as well. So once again, we're talking about Austin Jackson, and we are possibly seeing something happening here. We talked the other day about how maybe Noah Igbenogany might have had this religious awakening and it just completely changed the way that he views the game of football. If that is the case, again, good for him. I am going to need to see a little bit more before I'm willing to say maybe there's something there. I've seen too much bad in order to just assume that he's just going to suddenly miraculously become a really good player. But with Austin Jackson, once again, I refer to those 14 snaps because at the very least, during those 14 snaps, he looked like a competent football player. I don't know where that guy went later in the season. I don't know if maybe he was still hurt. I don't know if he forgot all of his fundamentals. I don't know what the situation was. But either way, it looks like Austin Jackson is slowly coming back to that competent football player. And when it comes to this offensive line, we don't need just a rock-solid line of 5 all-pro offensive linemen. We have Teron Armstead, we have Connor Williams at center, and we have right guard Robert Hunt. If you can just go ahead and get somebody who's decent at left guard, maybe Isaiah Wynn is just halfway decent. Maybe Austin Jackson at right tackle. If he's just halfway decent, at the very least, Robert Hunt can help him out. Durham Smythe is going to be in there a lot of the time helping to block as well. So all we really need from Austin Jackson is just don't be a turnstile. And turnstiles usually don't beat guys like Jalen Phillips one-on-one, regardless of the situation. So there is some reason to be hopeful there. I'll go ahead and bring up some interesting quotes here that were made yesterday regarding certain things about the offense. For instance, Robert Hunt was talking to the media, and one of the things that he said, he talked a little bit about Butch Berry, which I'll get into in just a moment, but the first thing I wanted to highlight is a lot of the offensive guys were talking about how much more comfortable they are in year 2 of McDaniel's scheme. And this is something that I brought up in the past as well. When players finally get the opportunity to play in a scheme that they are familiar with, that they are not having to just start over from scratch over and over again. Think about this, and I brought this up in previous shows, but this just bears repeating. The Miami Dolphins have had 5 different offensive line coaches in the past few years. They have not had the same offensive line coach in what feels like 6 seasons. I don't have the exact number in front of me. I'd have to go back and look at it. But the Miami Dolphins have not had any stability at the offensive line, not as the coach. They haven't had any stability as far as the offensive scheme itself, because with Brian Flores' regime, as short as it was, there were literally 3 different sets of offensive coordinators. You had Chad O'Shea the first year, then you had Chan Gailey out of retirement the second year, and then the third year was George Godsey and Eric Studsville, which, as much respect as I have for Studsville in particular as a running back coach, George Godsey, we've heard some pretty nasty stuff lately about George Godsey, and they were not built to be offensive coordinators. Kendall Lamb came out and basically he called out George Godsey right there on the field. And he talked about how I wish that he was here now so that I could show him how much I could prove him wrong. Because apparently George Godsey thought that Kendall Lamb was not going to amount to anything. And it turns out Kendall Lamb might be our best option at backup left tackle. He's not an all-pro by any means, but he's definitely not worth nothing. He's worth a lot to this Miami Dolphins offense right now. Because if anything happens to Teron Armstead, I guarantee you they're going to be looking at Kendall Lamb and saying, you are a first line of defense at the left tackle position. So all of that being said, why are we talking about this again? Austin Jackson is finally spending 2 consecutive years in the exact same offense. Mike McDaniel's scheme is the same scheme. The only thing that has changed is that Butch Barry is the offensive line coach now instead of Matt Applebaum. And even then, you can kind of squint at it and say that it's kind of the same because Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator, he actually is the same guy and he actually has some offensive line coach experience. So in some semblance, he is going to be giving some of the same instruction. It's just that now it's going to be coming through Butch Barry instead of Matt Applebaum. And Mike McDaniel is the same as well. So that also remains consistent. Speaking of Butch Barry, we've been all wondering exactly what it is about him. Is he going to be able to get something out of this group? Is he going to be able to develop them into something worthwhile? We've been hearing a lot of stuff lately out of Denver. Sean Payton is calling out people like Nathaniel Hackett, just riling up Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Thank you very much. There's no reason for you to do that, but whatever, that's fine. Then Sean Payton tried to walk it back and talk about how, I still had my commentator hat on instead of my coach hat, and it was a mistake. Nathaniel Hackett's a great guy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. When you call out people like that, those are your true feelings. You don't get to just pretend that you never said that. That is just something that you don't get away with. Believe me, I've said things in the past that I wish I hadn't said, and there are still people to this day who will not let me forget it. Some of them are my friends, some of them are not. But when it's my friends, at least I can look back on it and say, okay, yeah, it was a dumb thing to say, haha, it's okay. But regardless, some things are being said. Butch Barry is part of that discussion, and just a lot of the same rumors that we've been hearing about. Butch Barry is mean. Butch Barry is not somebody who you want to talk to on a regular basis. Butch Barry is not a good coach. All that good stuff. So what did Robert Hunt have to say about Butch Barry? This is a quote that he came from him. He said, quote, "I won't compare him to anybody, but Butch is his own guy. He does a fantastic job. I love what Butch brings. He's a loud personality, but he means well. He knows what he wants, and that's what you have to respect as a player. Somebody to come in and know what they want, you've got to respect that because that means it's a standard, and that's what we want to have is a standard. So it's good." So think about what Robert Hunt just said there. He did not say that, all those things about Butch Barry aren't true. He didn't say, no, Butch Barry's a good guy. No, Butch Barry is a really great coach. I love him so much. No, what did he say? He said that he's a loud personality, but he knows what he wants, and he comes in and lets you know what he wants. And he sets a standard, and that's what everybody wants over there is to have a standard. So he did not dismiss all the rumors about Butch Barry in Denver. He did not say that, all that stuff about Butch Barry isn't true. He's not that bad. He's not that terrible. Maybe he really is that tough. Maybe he's a tough-nosed coach. But if that is the case, and he sets a standard for the players to match, it doesn't seem like the Dolphins' offensive linemen, at the very least, seem to be bristling too much at the idea of how Butch Barry does things. We haven't heard any talk about how any sticky notes have been left in lockers or anything like that. But it's possible that the Dolphins' offensive linemen are just more receptive to Butch Barry's teaching than the guys in Denver were. And maybe, just maybe, the fact that the Denver Broncos were struggling so much as a whole, and the fact that everybody was making fun of Nathaniel Hackett, whether it was deserved or not, that might have had a lot more to do with the whole discussion and the frustration about everything. It just kind of just continues to ooze out like a poison in that entire locker room. Maybe Butch Barry by himself wasn't the problem. Maybe players were just frustrated and they were sick and tired of dealing with somebody who was going to criticize them so harshly because there was nothing else good to just kind of buoy them up while they were getting beat down by their offensive line coach. When your team is struggling, when you can't seem to buy a win, when your once superstar quarterback, Russell Wilson, can't seem to throw a 20-yard out route without getting picked off or making an incomplete pass, and he can't seem to do anything right anymore, which, by the way, a lot of people were criticizing Russell Wilson, and now that's why they're bringing in Sean Payton to somehow miraculously miraculously bring Russell Wilson back to true form. There have been a lot of people talking about, oh, now that Sean Payton's there, we're going to see the true Russell Wilson. Does that mean that Nathaniel Hackett was getting the worst out of Russell Wilson? And if that is the case, then is it any wonder why the rest of the Denver Broncos offense was just struggling and puttering along like they were going 3 miles an hour and everybody else was just zooming past them? It's not a surprise to me. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they wouldn't be upset. So now we bring in Butch Barry to a team that seems to be thriving on the success that they're having. They're doing a lot of back and forth training camp, whether the pads are on or off. It's a lot of offensive do well, then the defense will do well, and the offense will do well. It's not completely dominated by one team or another. And the ones that they do that, I will go ahead and say, just a few practices ago, the defense absolutely ripped the offense a new one. They couldn't get anything going. And then the very next practice, the offense kind of returned the favor and said, oh yeah, watch this. And while it wasn't quite as dominant on the other end, because there's a lot of talent on that defense, got to remember that, but the offense was actually able to do some really fantastic stuff against the defense, and they, quote-unquote, won the practice. There's always a lot that's said about who won the practice. And was it the offense? Was it the defense? And is it any wonder that during some of those practices where the offense supposedly won, those happen to be the ones that Austin Jackson seems to be doing a pretty good job? It's kind of scary that so many little things can be such a huge factor in whether a player succeeds or fails. Just going back to the whole Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa thing. When Brian Flores was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, our defense was great. We were happy with the defense and how it was going. We thought that Brian Flores was going to be a really good coach. Things tended to wear down after a little while because we were getting kind of sick and tired of the fact that he would not be committed to Tua. We were having all this Deshaun Watson rumor stuff. Everybody was getting frustrated with what his personnel choices would be. Why are you not putting in this player? Why are you not putting in this player? Why are you not doing anything with this? Why are you not trying to fix that? Because it seemed like Brian Flores did not care about the offense. And the guys that he brought in to care about the offense were nobody to write home about. It was nothing interesting there. Probably the most historic one that he picked was Chan Gailey, simply because once upon a time, he was a pretty good offensive coordinator. Not so much anymore, but once upon a time he was. And then you brought in Chan Gailey, but then you had to get rid of him, and you went with George Godsey and Eric Studsville. And there were some options they could have gone with, and they still opted to go with those two instead as co-offensive coordinators, which, again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense on its face. It just doesn't seem like a good system in the NFL. Maybe in college you can probably get away with something like that, but in the NFL, no, there's just too much going on at once. You can't get away with that. So now here we are, Austin Jackson, the same situation maybe. I can't say for sure yet because, again, training camp has just started, and there are going to be more opportunities for Jalen Phillips to get Austin Jackson back, and I'm sure that he'll get his chance. But so far, it seems like maybe just the smallest thing, the smallest factor that you can picture, just being able to be in the same offense for the second year in a row, for the first time in his career ever since he got to Miami. Maybe, just maybe, having somebody like a Butch Barry who has a completely different personality compared to what the head coach is. Mike McDaniel is a chill, laid-back kind of dude, and he's the kind of guy you'd want to hang out with even after practice is over. I don't know if Butch Barry is that guy when the pads are off. I don't know if Butch Barry is that same kind of guy when the cameras aren't rolling and when football is no longer the topic of discussion. I don't know what he's like at his home. But I do know, for one thing, that's a lot different than what we're seeing from Mike McDaniel. Butch Barry is a hard-nosed coach who absolutely, just as Robert Hunt mentioned it, knows what he wants, lets you know what he wants, and he's loud. He is not somebody who is going to be quiet. He's not going to be somebody who's going to take it gentle. He is going to be tough on you. He's going to be the drill sergeant of that offense. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe the drill sergeant is exactly what Austin Jackson needs to be able to get his fundamentals in order. Somebody who's going to be hard on him, somebody who's going to be nitpicking every little thing, if only because it means that he's going to be able to get it right, finally. And if anybody's wondering about what Austin Jackson's morale might be, if maybe he starts getting beat down a little bit too much and he starts suffering because he just feels like he has no confidence, well, remember, We still have a head coach who is literally built to thrive on getting players to be confident in themselves. As much as Butch Berry may knock Austin Jackson down at the end of the day, Mike McDaniel's still right there making sure, hey, listen, I understand things are getting tough right now, but this is where you got to show that you're the kind of guy that we can count on at right tackle. You feel me? That's the kind of discussion I can just picture Mike McDaniel having with Austin Jackson. And it seems sad that we have to talk about babysitting him. I'm sure that it's not the case out there. But in the event that maybe Austin Jackson does start losing confidence, which I don't see any reason for him to right now, if he's actually managing to stonewall the likes of Jalen Phillips. So right now, maybe there is hope for Austin Jackson after all. I would be very interested in seeing how it goes during preseason. I don't think Austin Jackson is going to be somebody that they're going to keep out of the preseason because he probably needs the reps with all the time that he missed out on in 2022. And maybe we'll start seeing some more solid snaps from him. Maybe we'll start seeing when the pads come on, he'll do even better against guys like Jalen Phillips. Maybe he'll be able to stop Bradley Chubb. Maybe he'll be able to stop Malik Reed. Maybe he'll be able to handle a whole bunch of different players. So cross your fingers, ladies and gentlemen, because if Austin Jackson can somehow become a competent right tackle, then the only real weak spot, and that's, again, to be determined, if Isaiah Wynn is the only guy on there who's the weak spot, and even he is decent, there's no reason why this offense cannot absolutely take it up to even another level in 2023. And another level on this offense, compared to what we saw last season, quite frankly, I think we are talking Super Bowl. So that's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. There's going to be another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation tonight at 7:30 p.m. Me and my co-host Ron Caniff will be talking about some of the stuff we've been seeing from training camp. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you check out You Break Wheel Fix if you need to get your wheels fixed or if you just want to give your ride a new look. You can reach out to them at 305-748-0112 or online at youbreakwheelfix.com to get yourself a free quote. And of course, go to prizepicks.com. Today is Taco Tuesday, so you're going to see discounted props all throughout the day. Use the promo code FIVE, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. So they give you $100 of their dollars, and you don't even have to touch your $100 until you're done playing with theirs. That's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. We will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Fins Nation.